Hey, I'm pretty excited for this part of the guide. This is a subject quite dear to my heart, and that is automating the deployment of our application. I've talked about this a bit more in the blog post about why this is such a good idea. Um, and for sure, I think we can all agree that we would never want to do all of the stuff that we just did in the previous couple of sections of the guide manually again. So let's script it so that next time we deploy our app, we can just run a script and it happens, which is pretty cool. So the first thing we want to do is get the file upload happening automatically. And this should be pretty familiar to you because you've done it like 800 times to get to this point. We've already done a little bit of bash scripting already with our super sh shortcut, and I'll quickly just go over the things that we did to write a script. So we created a file and called it .sh, which is a convention, the file ending of a bash script, and we added in this hashbang, which is a little weird comment that we put at the start of files that are executable in Linux, which says, please execute this script using this program. So when we run super.sh, Linux will know to run it with bash. We looked into set E, which means that when there's an error, the script fails, which is desirable behavior, and then we just wrote the rest of our script. And the other thing we had to do was set the file permission on the script so it became executable. So we'll just do that all over again in our new script. So I said I want to break this up into chunks. I'm going to write several scripts that do little tasks that we need to do for our deployment, and then we're going to write a master script that combines them all together and runs them so that in the end, by the end of this series of videos, you can deploy by going scripts deploy.sh, except you need to spell it right. So that's the goal. Just have one script, press enter, and it just happens. And then you can go to your web browser and be like, oh my God, did it work? Yeah, it worked, cool. That is what we're getting at here. But small steps, let's start with just uploading the code and cleaning it up as well. So for this section, I'm going to call this, what did I call it here? Upload code. Sure. Right. Let's start with a hashbang. Bin bash. Let's set our error flag so we don't forget and just echo hello. Just echo, why not? All right, save that. So I don't know why, but in git bash, when you run a script and you haven't set the executable permission, it still works, which is not the behavior you get in Linux. So you might forget to do this, but it's very important you don't. chmod +x, which says, please set a permission on this file that means I can execute it. Cool. I might pop this over here, put this here, just so that we can edit our code and then run it without having to flick between these too much. What's happening with the window? That's nice. By the way, if you've seen me manipulating these windows and you're like, how is this guy doing this? Is he a wizard? I'm not a wizard. I'm holding down the Windows key and then pressing the left and right arrows. So Windows left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right. Please just send me your Bitcoins in gratitude, because that is, I think, a massive quality of life improvement if you haven't done this already. So let's upload some code. We've already done this, right? We have done this a million times. So let's go over the steps just in our heads. First thing we did is we removed the existing deploy directory. And if you recall, we did that with rm.rf deploy. Now, I guess one thing to mention is all of these scripts are going to assume that you're in your project directory here and that the scripts folder is here, and everything will be done relative to that. And that's an assumption I'm comfortable making because I'm just going to remember it and never break it. I guess there are other scripting techniques that you can use to not rely on that assumption, but I think it's way more convenient if we just assume that we're always going to be in Django deploy when we're running this script. Cool. So let's start off by rm.rf deploy. And then the next thing we do, if you recall, is make a new directory, deploy. Anyway, I might chunk this up so it doesn't take too long. So we're going to make a new directory deploy, and we can now test our scripts. What's a script called? Upload code. there's a deploy directory. We run it again. There's a deploy directory. There's nothing in it. It's not too interesting yet. And then we want to copy all of the stuff that we want to deploy into this directory. And so we want our config file, our deploy dir, our scripts, and our tute folder. So let's, and the things we don't want, by the way, we don't want to copy our local database. We don't want to copy our local environment. Oh, and I think I forgot requirements text. We do want to copy that. So let's start from left to right. We want to copy our config file into deploy. I'm just going to copy paste because I'm lazy. Dunk, 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 dunk. That's probably enough. So config, scripts. So we will be copying some scripts to the server that don't need to be there, and I think that's okay. I don't really care. Tute. And finally, it's not recursive because it's just a file, requirements, text to deploy. Cool. Let's try that out. Let's have a look at deploy. So we copied all of our code into there. So far, so good. This is all local stuff, which is working nicely. And I think one thing that's nice to have as well in these scripts is just a bit of, I'm going to call it logging or printing out the progress, just so that you can watch it happen. And if it fails at some point or takes a long time at some point, you know what's going on. It gives you a bit more confidence in the script and also allows you to sort of think about, you know, why is this taking so long or why did it fail here? So I'm going to start using echo, which is like how you print stuff in Bash. And I'm going to put 3 sort of these equal signs in just as a formatting thing. And I'm going to write copying Django project files to server. Right. And a little trick I like to do is, actually, let's just run that first. Copying Django project files to server, and then it's done. I like to put a new line at the start of all my echoes, like this, but unfortunately, when you do that, Bash is like, I don't know what this is, and it looks pretty shitty. So echo needs to take a -e parameter, which is like a really random name. I don't know why E would have anything to do with new lines, but what it means is that when you put that in, it does respect the new lines and prints a new line for you. Cool. So copying Django project files to server, and I'm going to put a new one here where it says preparing scripts locally. So this is sort of announcing the script is running, and this is saying I'm doing this step, and then I'm going to put one at the end too that says we're done. So I just do what I said at the start and done or finished. Finished. Copying Django project files to server. Cool. Right, so we've prepared the scripts locally, and then if you recall, we need to copy files to the server, copying files to the server. And if you recall, we did that by using SSH to delete everything that was there. So, and we ran the rm.rf root deploy command. And then we ran scp recursively from our local deploy directory to root to server to the root folder. And then what I'm going to do is just add a little debugging statement at the end where we are going to go and ls the deploy directory. So this is going to log in with SSH. It'll by default be in the root folder because that's the home directory of root, and that's just where it sort of starts out. And this will run the like list file system things command on the deploy folder, allowing us to see what has been copied. So this is all stuff we've done before. I hope it's not unfamiliar or scary. We're just writing it in a script to automate it. So let's give it a try. Okay, So we're up to the bit where it's running SCP now, and we are getting the output of that as well, which is cool. And this is a bit slower than it's been in the past, just because we're uploading all of our stuff every time. And I think that's okay. It would be interesting to know if you could parallelize this and try to get it to upload multiple things at once, because I'm sure this is not the bandwidth capacity of our server, but whatever. And it's finished, and it did not run our ls command, or if it did, it didn't work. So let's just scrap that. That doesn't appear to have printed anything. Oh no, it did. That was the output. So in our deploy folder, we have config, requirements, scripts, and shoot, which is what we wanted to copy, which is cool. Sweet. Now, there is one thing I want to talk about before we go any further, and that is this. We've sort of hard-coded the name of our server. Even though it's the nickname we gave it, I'd actually prefer if we wrote this script in a more generic way, where we didn't have the name of the server hard-coded. So I'm going to write server equals shoot server, like that, as a bash variable. Quotes optional, but maybe just shits and gigs will give it some quotes. And then here, we'll reference the variable with $server. So if you recall, when we write variables in bash, all caps is sort of a, if it's a constant, is the, what do you call it, convention. You need to write the equals with no spaces, or else bash will be mean and it won't work. And then when you reference the variable, you need to use $, to get it to actually work. If you just write this, it won't work. So you have to put the $sign in to get it to expand. Sweet, so this should work as well. Give it a quick bill. All right, and so the next thing we need to do is actually log into the server and do the cleaning process, which, if you recall, involved deleting all of these PYC folders, deleting the PyCache folders, which debatable whether we actually need to do that, and then running DOS to Unix on all of our files to make sure that there weren't any Windows line endings. And I'm sure you'll be glad to never do that manually again. Here's the problem though. How do we run commands on the server? We've seen this, where we can run, like rmrf root deploy, and I'm sure we could just type it in like this and type a million different commands and it would work. It's kind of inefficient though, and I'll tell you why. Because every time you do this, we are logging into the server with SSH and then running the command and then logging out again. And then we're logging into the server with SSH and doing again. And it's also just like a pain in the ass to type this. It looks ugly. Like everything about this kind of sucks. And if we had to do it this way, then we would, but surely there's a better way. Surely someone in the decades and decades that Linux has existed has figured out a better way to do this. And they have. And this is how you do it. So the idea here is that we are running SSH and we're passing it a string, and then it's going and executing that string for us on the server. And so what we're about to do here is basically the same idea with just a bit more of a fancy syntax to make it nicer to read. So I guess the first thing we need to look at is this idea of telling it to run bash, right? So we're saying sh into the server and run bash. And then I'm going to write this thing that's called a here doc. So it's called a here doc. No idea why it's called that, but that is the name. And it looks like this. Is it hostname? I think that works. We'll find out if it fails. Okay, so what we've got here is we're going to SSH into the server as root. We're going to run the bash terminal scripting language thing. And this syntax here basically means in between this EOF and this EOF, and these can be whatever you want. You could call these both, Sally, and it would still work, but EOF just means end of file. It's saying take this script and pump it. You can think of these as like pumping the script into bash and running it. And this is a syntax which allows you to run scripts on the server without having to do crazy shit like write a separate script and upload it to the server and then run that. This is just a nice, convenient syntax to do this. So let's comment this other stuff out and just give this a try. Cool. Hello from the server. Oh, yeah, this is actually, I'm kind of glad we got to this. So, some of this worked. LSB release -A, which doesn't work on my local machine. I'll try LSB release. It's going to be like, I don't know what that is. So this ran on the server, and it printed out that we are in fact running this command from Ubuntu. So this string successfully got piped into bash on the server and executed, which is super cool. But then it says hello from the server, desktop, VH, whatever. Now that's the name of our local computer. That is not the name of the server. The server's name is like, what do we call it? Django Shoot or something when we created it. So this host name variable is not getting executed on the server. And that's something that we need to sort of look into a bit more, because I guess when you take a variable in bash and interpolate it into the string, like hello server world, what it'll do is it'll take this, stick it in here, and then print the string. And so what's happened here is that when we define this string, this variable is being inserted into the string on this computer before it gets sent to the remote computer to be executed. So the short of it is that if you want to pipe in or put variables in this script, you need to escape the $sign like that. And this basically tells bash, don't interpret this as a variable expansion, just use it, like interpret it literally as a string and don't touch it. So if we run it now, run that, run this. Hello from the server, Django Shoot. So it works now. It actually is sort of not trying to evaluate this variable on our machine. It's evaluating the variable on the remote machine. And I've done some really dumb shit before where I've like run scripts that are 3 sort of variable expansions deep, and you have to put in like a million of these. And if you find yourself doing that, you're probably doing something wrong, because it's never a good idea to have to deal with a bajillion backslashes. But that is how you solve that problem if you ever run into it. Cool. So that distraction aside, what the fuck were we doing? We were copying the code onto the server, which we prepared locally, copied onto the server, making sure we cleaned up the deploy directory before we did that. And now what we want to do is to clean up the code that we've uploaded to make sure there are no compiled Python files, there aren't those stupid PyCache directories, and there aren't any Windows line endings. And we've done this already. I might just SSH in so we can just run these commands to jog your memory, because I'm sort of assuming that you are not intimately familiar with these Linux commands. So we're in root, and I'm just going to use absolute paths in this case because we'll use them in the script as well. So let's run find on root deploy. So this is basically saying find me all the files and folders in the root deploy folder. That's all of them. Cool. And you can as well do find me everything with the name ending with PYC, which are our Python bytecode files, which we don't want to copy over into our application. And it finds us all of those. And finally, find us everything in root deploy with the name PYC at the end and delete them for us. It goes and does that. And if we rerun this, you'll see there's nothing. So this is what we want to run first. I'm actually just going to put this at the end. I'm going to say, and we want to run find root deploy, find all the files in root deploy that have the name ending with pyc, and delete them. I'm going to do the same with PyCache because it just burns my eyes and I just don't want to look at it, and this is probably unnecessary, but I'll do it anyway. PyCache, all that crap, delete it. And then we have that thing that we did before. So I'll do it. I'll run the PyCache thing again just to test it, make sure we're not putting in commands that are wrong. Right. And now we've got this thing where we want to find all the files in root deploy, which is just these, which are all the files that we want to deploy. But we only want the files, so we're going to give the dash type F argument to filter out all the directories like scripts. These are only files. Let's type that in. That seems good. Find root deploy type F. And then we want to run DOS to Unix on all of them. And the way that we prepared this data to get passed to xargs, which will run DOS to Unix in parallel on every file, is to use this -0 print 0 thing, which just changes how the data is printed into this weird format. And then we send all of that data with the pipe to xargs, which runs some command on every one of these results in parallel. And that command is DOS to Unix. And we need to tell xargs to expect every incoming argument to be separated by that weird magic character that we've printed here. So we type in the 0 thing. It runs DOS to Unix in parallel on everything, which is pretty sick. So let's do that. Print with the weird null thing, run xargs, expect the weird null thing, and run DOS to Unix. Cool. This might bore the shit out of you, but I'm going to run this all again just to make sure it works. Let us run this. And if this works, we never have to do this manually again. We can just bang on this upload code button and never upload code again. We can just modify this script if our requirements change, but it just means that all this manual work that we've been doing over and over in this guide is gone forever, which I like the idea of. Okay, do I have any coffee left? Not really. Okay, so we're copying everything from our local machine onto the server. I've talked about this a bit, but I'll just go over it again while we're waiting. It's really important that all the files on the server that we deploy, with the exception of things like the database, are copied from our local machine, from our source code repository to the server. And that's so that the server doesn't get out of sync. We want to make sure that everything on the server is the same as what we're working on locally, so that we know that the changes that we make in development are going to be similar to the changes we then want to happen on the server. And the only way we can really achieve that is through what I'm going to call immutable deployments, which is where essentially you every time you deploy, you delete everything that was there before and just replace it with some new stuff instead of changing it in place. All right, so it looks like our files have all been copied and cleaned up, and that is the end of this section where we've uploaded our code. Congratulations, you are now a, I reckon, reasonably competent bash scripter after writing this. And in the next video, we will start installing our code.